The following half-hour show is a paid political program and is not endorsed by this station, management, or staff.
The following program is sponsored by Excalibur Insurance Management Services.
On this week's show, we welcome newly re-elected to a third term, United States Congressman Dan Meuser of the 9th Congressional District. A quick reminder of Dan's political career. In 2011, Pennsylvania Governor Tom Corbett nominated Dan to serve as Pennsylvania's Secretary of Revenue. While there, Dan significantly reformed the department to increase efficiencies. Dan's leadership was recognized by the Council on State Taxation for having the most dramatic improvement of any Department of Revenue in the country. Dan's congressional career began in 2018 when he was elected for the first time. He was re-elected in 2020 to a second term by a large margin. In Congress, Dan serves on two very important committees, that being small business as well as foreign affairs. Very importantly, Dan also serves on the Border Security Caucus. We will be discussing today the results of Dan's election, where he received an amazing 70% of the vote, as well as his role as Republicans take the majority in the United States House, and the Republicans' priority with that majority on their agenda items when they get sworn in January.
This is the Volpe Report, a weekly news and political interview show examining the latest local, state, and national issues with Chuck Volpe. Insightful, informative, controversial, the area's premier political talk show, the Volpe Report.
Dan, welcome to the Volpe Report.
Chuck, always a pleasure.
It's always good to have you back, my friend, and let me start this show. It's always a pleasure when I can say congratulations on another landslide victory in your congressional race. With all the close races across this country, and obviously as we're taping the show, they're still counting votes. The fact of the matter is your landslide in the neighborhood, the healthy neighborhood of 70% or so, is a testament to, and this is your third term now, your service for your constituents, their belief in your service and all you do for the area. So I'm one of those constituents, since this media market covers Northeast and Central Pennsylvania. And your district is both, you actually couple part of the Northeast and then into Central Pennsylvania. So a wonderful affirmation of the work you do.
Thanks. It was. I mean, one reason that I was very hopeful and worked towards a high percentage was I did look at it as a affirmation of the type of work that we do here in the district and the voice that we resonate for the people in Washington. And, they gave us 2 thumbs up. Mostly even the new counties that I have, Bradford, Susquehanna, Wyoming, we did better than 70%.
Amazing.
Yeah, our district team is our number one focus in our pillars. We've got our 4 pillars. Number 1 is constituent services. That's one thing that we can control, and frankly, we're great at it. When I first got into this, I said we're going to have the best constituent services out of 435 districts, and I think we're getting there.
Right. Well, I've had the pleasure of meeting some of your staff, and you have quality people, and they follow your lead, and agreed. And as I said, the best affirmation of you're doing a great job is when you get those kind of vote totals. Then there's the other extreme where if you're not, you're in that category, you end up getting primaried in your own party, and then you have a tough fight for re-election. Now, having said that, we also speak here with not official, but basically official. You are now going into the majority in the United States House of Representatives. You've been 4 years in the minority. You performed amazingly well in that circumstance. Having said that, in the majority, with your proximity and relationship that I can testify to personally, I know the relationship you have with the leader, about to be our next speaker, Kevin McCarthy. I met him with you and in your presence. He has come to this state at your beck and call at least 3 or 4, not just the state, your district, at least 3 times I'm aware of in the last 3 or 4 months, including a week before the election. So that also bodes well for the area in that you're going to be on, I expect, good committees and be in a position of power, maybe even chair some committees and be in leadership. So your thoughts as this next Congress will get sworn in January, and whatever the vote total is, whether it's 5 or 10 majority, right. You are in it. So what do you think about, and what do you think? First, we're going to look at it, your personal involvement based on your wish list of committees and what you would like to do. And secondly, generally, we'll get to that later in the show, but the Republican agenda as you take the House.
Yeah, thanks. It's going to be much different. It's going to be much better. We will be able to do some course correction here and then some. The excessive spending will cease. I mean, it just will. I mean, we spent far too much during COVID, and then once Biden came in, they thought it was a wonderful idea to spend another $5 trillion. That was completely partisan, received no Republican support. So you're going to count on fiscal responsibility. But we're going to be very specific in our legislation, meaning for the border. We're going to be very specific as to what corrective measures will take place to assure that we go back to the type of border control that we had, frankly, in the Trump administration. And it's going to be very specific, and we'll have to get through the Senate, because we will have a majority. I'll just say that right now. It's mathematical certainty. We will have a majority by at least 4, 5, 6, maybe 10 members. So
in the House.
Yeah, in the United States House. So we will have the gavels. We will be in charge of the U.S. House. And as you said, Kevin McCarthy and other great members will be in leadership. But when it comes to the Senate, that remains to be seen. We will have, it looks like, at least 50, which we have now, which is not enough, because with Kamala Harris. Right. So that looks good. So in the end, this election could prove to be very successful. Granted, it wasn't this red wave, and I think expectations were set too high. Nevertheless, if we can control it, we will control the House and the Senate. We can get much more done. So specific on the border, shutting that down, going to harsh extremes on the drug cartels. And when we pass these bills, when it gets to the Senate and even in the House, we're going to see what Democrats vote against it, because they're going to be very specific. They're not going to be able to say, oh, I like 70% of it, but I didn't like 30% of it. And so that will be the case for the border. That will be the case for our energy policy, from natural gas to permitting to pipelines to the type of funding that our financial institutions and even local banks can provide to the American energy businesses. Because right now, and it's not an exaggeration whatsoever, the Biden administration, aided and abetted by this Democrat Congress led by Nancy Pelosi and the others, is at literal war on American energy. And I've got all the data, all the specifics, and it's truly becoming my number one issue for a lot of reasons. And I think it will be our caucus's number one issue, because it attributes to 50% of the inflation. It attributes to the grocery prices. It attributes to the diesel costs that are way up. As we enter the winter, home heating fuels are going to be double, if not triple. And not to mention the high cost of gasoline. So it's crashing people's affordability, their disposable income. So I'm going to focus there, and I'm going to be on financial services, very likely. As you mentioned, I got a shot at a chairmanship of our small business committee, but financial services for a couple of reasons. One, to me, it's all about my customers, which is constituent services. Yeah. There's not one Republican member on financial services north of the Mason-Dixon line, all the way up to New England, New York, and Pennsylvania. So with my background and everything else, I can be there. I can help the energy industry. I can help access to capital for small businesses. And I think I can really deliver for Pennsylvania's 9th Congressional best in that capacity.
Well, you'll be delivering for Pennsylvania as a whole, Dan, and you'll be delivering for the United States. Governor Christie was on this show, former New Jersey governor, in January, Dan, and he was telling stories about Russian tankers filled with Russian gas and oil traveling up United States interstates to New York and New Jersey to deliver, because they've shut down all oil in New York. They've shut down all Marcellus Shale drilling. And they're condemning their citizens to the highest energy prices in my lifetime. And people in this country, literally in the lower spectrum of income, low middle class and the poor people, they're going to have to make choices about their thermostat and if they can put food in the family grocery bill for the week. Heat or eat.
They are right now. They are right now. And they're angry. They're upset. I see either tears in their eyes or I just see anger in their eyes. And this has got to correct. And one of the worst things that just happened with this election is somehow or another the Biden administration feels emboldened because we didn't have a red tsunami and pick up 40 seats and crush it in the Senate and all, although we will have narrow victories, which is enough. He stated yesterday how they're just going to stay the course. Everything they're doing now, they're just going to keep on doing it.
Chuck Schumer gave that speech. Did you hear Chuck Schumer's speech the morning after?
We're going to spend. Inflation isn't a problem. Oh, don't worry about it. At 11% in Pennsylvania, not just 8%. Gasoline prices. Oh, yeah, we're going to go green. They're going green not through American innovation, but through the heavy hand of government going to war with our domestic energy, which is absolutely unforgivable.
Well, one of the things I took encouragement from is a number of, in large states, top 10 states in terms of population and geography in this country, large states are literally, through their governors, telling all of the major investment companies and financial funds and the BlackRocks of the world, in companies like that, that you will, now they handle hundreds of billions of dollars in those states' monies to invest them for return on investment. They are at pulling the investment from them and saying, because you are doing things to disincentivize your investors from investing in fossil fuel and energy production, therefore you're barred from doing any business in this state.
They're breaking the law. There are laws against that. You cannot pick and choose investments. It's supposed to be the fiduciary responsibility for the return, not for some political agenda.
Exactly.
Right.
One of my heroes, Governor Ron DeSantis, who had a historic victory the other day in Texas, in Florida, banned them. Governor Abbott in Texas banned them. These companies have literally are being brought to their knees. We're talking about them losing trillions of dollars in government states. They're handling all of those big states' monies, and they're not handling it anymore.
No.
So,
well, people like DeSantis and others that take strong leadership and are decisive look at the results in Florida and look at the returns that he got.
And in
Texas. He had historic wins. So, we're going to have our hands full, but we're going to move the needle. We're going to make a much bigger difference. Kevin McCarthy is going to be an excellent speaker. He's going to be elected. We have a plan called Commitment to America, to strengthen America, to make America safer, to make our government more accountable, and to assure the freedoms of the Constitution. And it's a real plan. As someone who was in business for quite a few years, I need a plan in order to work, in order to operate, in order to execute, and our entire caucus is going to be behind it.
I had the pleasure, due to your intercession, of talking to him privately for about 5 minutes in Philadelphia at a house at a small gathering, and then heard his speech. He laid out that plan. I won't call it Newt Gingrich's contract with America, but it was different. But it was his plan, and it's very similar in setting out the goals and ideals that you hope to attain. Well, Dan, we have our first break. We are here today, a well-known person. I don't know how many times he's been on, well over double digits, probably half a dozen times this year alone. But I won't say congressman-elect because he is a 3-term congressman now. He won by an overwhelming landslide, and as we talked about a little earlier. And we are very happy to have in studio today your congressman from the 9th Congressional District, Dan Meuser, who now will be accepting positions of power in a House-led majority, Republican majority in the United States Congress. So we'll continue to tap his brain for what we can expect when this new Congress gets sworn in with a Republican Speaker of the House. Nancy Pelosi is gone, and what we can expect as Americans and as Pennsylvanians. So we'll be back right after these messages. At this time of year, term-limited governors begin thinking about their legacy. And I have a hard time wrapping my head around what Democratic Pennsylvania Governor Tom Wolf will claim as his legacy. Perhaps the first thing popping into viewers' minds is the dreadful, unconstitutional, and illegal COVID-19 lockdown in 2020. implemented by Governor Wolf without so much as discussion of any part with the Republican-controlled legislature, a mistake the governor admitted. Even worse, many of the decisions made on who could and couldn't remain open during the imposed lockdown were not even made by the governor, but by underlings on his staff, not based on health or medical science, but based on political science. Many businesses disappeared from the map during the lockdown, and many more are struggling to remain open now with inflation at an all-time high and many economic forecasters predicting a recession late this year or early next year. More recently, the state was accused of violating the constitutional rights of the parents of convicted cop killer Eric Freen. In the initial phase of a more than $12 million manhunt, 46 guns, none of which were used in the murder of the state trooper, were confiscated from Freen's parents. To justify the taking of the guns, the state contended the weapons were needed as Eric Freen's appeals worked their way through the courts. But the U.S. Third Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that the authorities seized Freen's property without compensation in violation of the Fifth Amendment and hindered their right to keep firearms in violation of the Second Amendment. And let us not forget the infamous decision by then Secretary of Health, Dr. Rachel Levine, to require COVID patients be taken in at nursing homes, a catastrophe. According to reporting by Spotlight, nearly 70% of the state's pandemic deaths were in nursing homes. But after Dr. Levine learned the COVID problems were going to be serious, her first action was to get her mother out of assisted living facilities and into a nice, comfortable hotel suite. If the governor has a legacy, it's likely he traded it in with his trademark Jeep. Welcome back. We're here with United States Congressman Dan Meuser, heading for important committee assignments and leadership roles in our next Congress. We are fortunate to have him in this area, and we're going to talk a little bit about that now. So, Dan, getting back to you, kind of gave some general outlines, but on day one in January, you're going to go and be sworn in with a majority, and Kevin McCarthy will walk up and accept the gavel as the Speaker of the House of Representatives. And day one, let's talk about your first 100 days, your first things in terms of your priorities that you believe, because we've talked a little bit about some of your specific issues for our area in your district. Sure. But obviously you represent the United States of America. You're in the people's house. So what will be, outline some of your thoughts on where you see this house going?
Well, first off, the first vote will be for Speaker, and we'll be voting for Kevin McCarthy. You've gotten to know him very well, as you've mentioned. Yes. He's a fighter. He's got a plan, and I have trust in him and I'll look forward to helping him see through that plan. Our second vote is going to be to defund the 87,000 IRS agents that was in the
Thank heavens.
Yeah.
Thank heavens.
That was in the Inflation Reduction Act. That worked out real well, right?
Yeah. Wow.
So that'll be day one. Moving forward, after that, it's about strengthening our national security, which I mentioned, border security, energy policy, and so forth. I'm on foreign affairs as well, so assuring that where any legislation that we need from a foreign affairs standpoint, will now be in control of. And clearly, we've got many international issues taking place and even developing from China to North Korea to just dealing with NATO and the EU, as well as obviously Russia and the Ukraine. So that's all going to be very important. But after that, it's about the economy. It's about looking to make the tax cuts that were implemented a couple of years ago permanent, because they're about to run their course. Yeah. So that's going to be very, very important. I mean, the idea, we did a small business tax cut, or I wasn't there at the time in 2017, a 20% reduction for small business. We can't take that away from them right now with this inflation taking place and the skyrocketing costs and supply issues and wages going up because we don't have enough workers and all. That needs to be done. Right now, my understanding is the Democrats are against it. And we're going to we'll pass it in the House. We will see which senators in the Senate and we're going to make certain that the American people are aware of who's voting against it, and then so that should put their jobs in jeopardy, and then we'll see if President Biden vetoes it. Why? We need to be the most competitive economy in the world. The world wants us to be. Being on foreign affairs, people at times say to me, why foreign affairs? How does that help Pennsylvania? How does it help your district? Very, very much so. From a trade standpoint, when Trump was in office anyway, I worked with Peter Navarro and others on trade issues on the USMCA. So it's very important there, but as well as the type of allocations that take place to these countries, but also us getting to the bottom of COVID origins. We will, there will be, when I say accountability in government, that's going to be part of it too. That's not going to be what we're going to be known for in this Congress. Right. However, the people are going to see Jim Jordan and others running committees, getting to some answers on issues that people are very upset about.
Are you going to, I hope, call Anthony Fauci before one of those committees?
Right.
I want to talk about where the answers need to start coming from.
Yeah. Why was that money allocated as it was? Why did you completely dismiss any possibility of the origins of this virus coming out of the Wuhan lab? And we need to know so it doesn't happen again.
Right.
And there will be other things. I mean, the Department of Justice. Right? I mean, how does he, Garland, the current Attorney General, call a group of parents domestic terrorists? When one of their daughters was assaulted in a bathroom, he had every right to be highly upset. They tried to sweep it under the rug. He brought it to the attention. They call him a domestic terrorist over it. Mayorkas is going to be dragged in. Right? The Homeland Security.
Is that what he does?
Yeah, I know, right?
Is that what he does?
That's a complete,
really, wow,
complete misnomer for his work. I've met directly with this guy this close. He's lucky I was able to restrain myself as he was telling me that our border was secure, when meanwhile we have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of illegals coming across, drugs to no end, illegal drugs, fentanyl, killing tens of thousands of America's youth for the most part. And why are they not just coming through and saying, hey, I plead asylum and being catch and release, is the Biden administration? Because they're carrying drugs or they're criminals. Right. That's why they're gotaways or they're terrorists. Right. We have over 100 that were caught that were on the terrorist watch list. So they're doing some really hurtful, damaging work to our national security. That needs to be reversed. And President Biden had the gall, the audacity, just yesterday, to say how he's going to be staying the course. There's no corrections necessary. Right. So, yeah, we're going to be a little bit fired up. We're going to have a sense of urgency because that's how I operate, and that's how you operate. Right. You come out of the business world, you got a sense of urgency. You want to accomplish this year, not make excuses for not getting things done, as most, sadly, politicians, if you will, professionals that tend to be on the left side of the aisle anyway, operate. No, we're not going to operate that way. We don't want to just be. I don't want to be here in a year pointing fingers. I certainly wouldn't, because I don't point fingers. I look in the mirror, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to get some things done that the people want us to get done.
Right. It would be a huge mistake, and the Republicans should hope and applaud them on and can say, yeah, you keep giving the rope. Yeah. To not understand that and interpret Tuesday's results, November 8th's results, as a mandate to continue their programs. Yeah. If they drink that Kool-Aid, as apparently Majority Leader Chuck Schumer in the Senate said, we're staying the course, I think that I made a prediction I turned out to be wrong about, that there would be a 30 to 40 vote pickup in the House. Well, it wasn't that. But having said that, if they continue along this road, some of the reasons that prevented, and that's not for this show, some of the reasons that presented themselves as why you didn't pick up that 30 or 40 will happen in 2024, especially with the right person at the top of the Republican ticket for president.
You know, I met Joe Biden years back a couple of times when he was vice president. I met with him. He was very gregarious and reasonable. Moderate. Good guy. This is not the Joe Biden that many of us knew, or even many Democrats share with me. He's completely sold out to ideology rather than outcomes. You know, we had a saying in business for many years, you know, check your ego at the door. I mean, my advice to Democrats right now is, you know, focus on results and check your ideology at the door. Right. Now, when Joe Biden was sworn in 2 years ago, I was there. Okay, many Republicans didn't go.
I know you went.
I went to the inauguration. He talked about being a uniter. I applauded it. Okay, be a uniter. He's been anything but along the way. I mean, from MAGA fascists and the rhetoric to laying out bills that gave me reason or gave me the ability to vote for. They've done everything they possibly can to lose my vote, if you will, along the way. Even on a transportation infrastructure bill that I helped design, up until 3 or 4 days before, when they were tying it to the Build Back Better $1 trillion monstrosity.
$5 trillion.
Yeah, the CHIPS Act. I helped design with others, with Mike McCall and others. We were right there. It was an $80 billion bill. I was all set to vote for it. And within a 48-hour period, it turned into $240 billion. I mean, that's equivalent to, think about it, that's equivalent to buying a $80,000 house. I'll just use those numbers. Not many houses, $80,000. Going to close on it, and then they say, hey, by the way, there's a swamp in the back that's cost an extra that costs $240,000 more that you got to buy as well. No, I don't want the swamp.
Yeah, I know.
And
Yeah, exactly.
so it's absolutely equivalent to that. So look, be the uniter. Let's see where I'm all for it. If he can pivot like famously Bill Clinton did back in the 90s, let's get some things done. Right. Because we've all been campaigning, we've all been, you know, throwing the political rhetoric around. Right. Now let's actually govern, work together, and get some things done and move our country in the right together, strengthen us for the American people, for some people of Pennsylvania, from a national security standpoint. Let's lower the price of gasoline. Let's have responsible, the cleanest drilling for oil and gas and natural gas in the world.
But drilling nonetheless.
Stop begging OPEC and Venezuela. I mean, how mad is that?
And then they spit in your face and make a mockery out of it, then tell you to go pound sand. A month later.
And let's have a 20-year, 30-year transition plan for electric vehicles and everything else. Not a bill that puts $240 billion for charger ports. I mean, what in hell? So all that being said, if he can truly be a uniter and have some common sense here, I look forward to that. We welcome that. Now, bet the money is they're not going to do it, right? They've got their ideology, and he just stated he's not going to, but we shall see.
Dan, again, it's rare that I have no additional comment. You said it so forcefully and eloquently. I'll just say touche and ditto that. Well done, my friend. Thank you so much. We are here today, and based on what we've heard today, we can be not only proud but hopeful that our congressional representative, who has his hand in the levers of power in that House, what he said is a wake-up call for all America. And as I said, I have nothing more to add than to say I support him wholeheartedly in that mission, as we all should. So again, we were here today with 9th Congressional United States Congressman Dan Meuser, overwhelmingly, 70% of the vote, overwhelmingly reelected to a 3rd term, and he looks forward to going to Washington to set things right. We all hope he can. See you next Sunday at 10:30.